All right, good evening. This is the special board meeting of the Evan Grove Charter School on what is today? Wednesday, December 15th, 2022. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And if the board would join me in reciting the mission statement: to inspire passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time. Thank you. Sarah, would you mind doing roll call?
Got it. Dwayne Degler.
Here.
Stacy Barno.
Here.
Michelle McCrae.
Here.
Deji Akintoy.
Here.
Brian Ladman.
Present.
Colleen Preston. And Eugene Steger.
Eugene is present.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to move along, and I just want to just reiterate for anyone out there, this meeting was called to facilitate some facilities projects. There is no other topic being discussed this evening. This will be a one-topic meeting to discuss and approve a potential project for ventilation for the 2022 year. So I understand from Brian Bruto there was no public comment. So having said that, we're going to move ahead. Donna, do you want to go, or Kristen, sorry, do you want to outline what the project is and why the haste of this?
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay, and I will share, and I'm sharing my screen so I can bring up the documents for everyone to see. If you hold on one moment, I'll just pull this up. I tried to put out a large email that referenced everything that the the finance committee talked about, and a lot of Brian's questions I hope were answered with that email that I sent out last night. But to summarize, this is about the State Road Campus Ventilation Unit Replacement Project. This started about in the summer of 2020 when we were in the beginning of COVID and looking to bring students back. We had our ventilation systems at State Road and Campbellsville assessed to determine whether or not we had the capacity to provide good airflow as well as air quality. There have been some work done on both of the units at State Road and Campbellsville, but at the end of the day, the units at State Road are very old, and the recommendation from the engineers and the professionals that came in to assess them have recommended that State Road, the ventilators at State Road, be replaced. So with that being said, we spent many months looking at the needs, trying to assess what would work best in those classrooms, as well as what would not take away from the renovations that have already been completed while being fiscally responsible. So the summer, the bid docs were prepared, reviewed by the engineering companies and the mechanical engineers, and the bids went to, we went to bid in November. The public bid opening was held on Friday, December 3rd. We received, I think, a little less. I think the feeling was a little less than we had anticipated because the pre-bid meeting was highly attended. But at the end of the day, for this particular project, for the general trades contracts, we've received 3 bids. For the mechanical contract, 2 bids, the electrical contract, 3 bids, and the plumbing contract, we also received 3 bids. To kind of review the project with the base scope as well as the alternates. And again, the alternates were prioritized. That doesn't necessarily mean that the facilities committee and or administration is recommending we move forward with all items, but the list has been prioritized as to what needs to be addressed currently at the State Road campus, but have also built in the flexibility that we'll be able to attend to some of these other projects at a later date. So we have the base scope, which is the replacement of the ventilation units at the State Road campus in all classrooms in the 1955 and 1928 building. We have upgraded HVAC controls for the new system. We have upgraded electrical service for the facility as needed to support air conditioning in the auditorium, air conditioning in the 1928 building, air conditioning in the 1955 building, and the replacement of existing classroom casework that has been part of this project and many other projects over the years. We received and opened the bids, and included in the email that I sent out last night, which is attached to the board agenda, you can see that all of the bids that were received, Stan Rock was the only plumber. Then you'll see the 3 for the general trades, the 3 for the,
I apologize. May I just interrupt? I'm going to go ahead and share. I think this is what you're referring to. You can see your screen, correct?
actually, I thought I was sharing, but let me
No.
go back into the meeting.
Is this the one that you're referring to?
I'm not seeing anything. Yep, that's it.
All right, so I'll leave that open for everyone to refer to. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay. So again, 3 electrical contracts and 2 mechanical contracts. So Jared Heckendorn-Shiles, we collected the bids, reviewed all the documents and the bid submissions, as well as put together the scenarios for the different options that administration has been talking about for the last year and a half. With that being said, all in, which would be a great scenario for AGCS, the budget became pretty hefty, and it definitely came in over than what we were anticipating. So we had anticipated that. We had come up with an option 2, which and option 1 basically included everything that I mentioned before. Option 2 included the base bid, which was the unit replacements, HVAC controls to monitor and maintain, the auditorium HVAC, the electrical service, and air conditioning in the 1928 building. So the budget was considerably lower than option 1, but still a little over the budget that we had planned for this project. Option 3, again, would included the base bid as well as the HVAC controls, the auditorium HVAC, and then the electrical service that would support the auditorium HVAC, as well as give the school the capacity to do air conditioning or provide relief to the 1955 and 1928 classrooms in the future, which we currently do not have. And then the casework is something that we may look to phase in, similar to what we did with the bathrooms over the last 4 years. So facilities met last week to review the bid tabulations, to talk about the base bid, the various alternates, the combination of the alternates, as well as the prioritization. Brian, did you want to make any comments on that for our facility committee meeting last week?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so we did, like Donna said, we went over them. At that time, it looked like option 3 was probably the most reasonable and attainable, but unfortunately not capturing all of the alternates. Really beyond that, I didn't have much else to add, Donna.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. So with that, at the end of our facilities committee meeting, the recommendation from the committee was to refer the bid tabulation costs as well as the funding for this project onto the finance committee, who met last Friday. So last Friday, we covered this area. I would say that we covered it in depth, similar to what we did with the facilities committee. And, we were looking at this project and future projects, as well as what the funding looked like. And for this, the funding breaks down as such as this. For the ESSERS 3 ARP funding, which we've been talking about for almost a year, 1.2 million is going into this project. For the general fund, the 22-23 fiscal year, our capital expenditure budget, we're looking to take $785,000 to finish to fund the remaining part of the project. Our budget for capital expenditures, not including ESSERS, is $2 million next year. So I feel relatively comfortable with the $785,000 and change that we would be allocating towards this project. There are other projects on the books, such as, Brian's capital expenditures for computers. There are always equipment purchases, as well as our debt service. The principal payment comes out of that capital budget. And then another project that we're currently vetting and preparing the scope for is the parking lot expansion at Campbellsville. So with that being said, the budget is quite full next year. Both facilities and finance discussed the projects that needed to be done and that they were both a huge priority and something that the school needed to address sooner rather than later. We talked about the revenue that we have sitting in deferred funds currently, which reflects the reconciliation from the 18-19 school year for Coatesville when the student rate was underfunded. We reached out to the PDE for us to be reimbursed at the proper rate. The PDE was in agreement and they reimbursed the school $654,000. Prior to us receiving the money, the Coatesville School District filed an administrative claim, not only with Avon Grove Charter School, but with the Collegium Charter School. And when we received the funds, it was placed in deferred revenue until there was a judgment or opinion granted with regards to whether or not the charter school would keep the funds and were entitled to the funds, or whether or not the funds would be returned to the school district. They were placed in deferred because it is a significant amount of money and it would have had a material impact on our financials for the 2018-2019 year. So after reviewing it with the auditor and Mike Wisman, it was decided we would put it in deferred until the state made up their mind. We really thought that we would have our hearing and that it would have been resolved in maybe 6 to 8 months, but we celebrated the 2-year anniversary of the claim and placing the funds in deferred on December 12th. Kristen and I have been in conversations with Stacy. We've been following this very closely. The Collegium, which their situation was much more dire than ours, went to the Court of Common Pleas last year, and the judgment was made on their behalf that the funds were indeed due to Coatesville, which sets the precedent. The last time we received a letter with regards to the update for our administrative hearing from the PDE was last summer. So we haven't heard from the PDE, we haven't heard from Coatesville. It's been 2 years. We're looking to resolve this with Stacy and Jack in January. So our contingency and the backup for this rather robust capital expenditure budget is to commit and or allocate those funds for the $654,000 for the 18-19 reconciliation for Coatesville for capital improvement projects to ensure that the school is covered and that we won't be dipping into any general fund monies that would normally go to students.
Hey, Donna, can I just ask a question? You made a statement and I want to make sure I heard it right, or maybe you misstated it. You had said the judgment came back for Collegium, that the money was, the way it was stated, I think I heard that it was actually due for Coatesville. Did you mean it was actually rightfully?
It was for Collegium. It was right
perfect.
for Collegium. And the Coatesville Area School District received an order from the Common Pleas in January. And then again, Kristen, I believe it was March, that they had to pay the Collegium Charter School. So with that being said, we've been waiting patiently for our administrative hearing. We understand COVID had a huge impact with the delay, but at this point it's been 2 years. And then lo and behold, we have another reconciliation that is currently waiting in the wings that has already been, they've filed a claim against, and that was for last year. And the amount of that equates to $827,000. So there is money out there that the school is working to secure. We submitted the most recent reconciliation to the PDE Unipay system for payment. We should be hearing shortly whether or not that is going to be funded this month or next month. And we will keep the Finance Committee and Board posted on that. So in answer to the question I received, I believe it was from Brian yesterday via email with regard to funding, There is funding for this project. 2/3 of it, or almost 2/3 of it, will be coming from the ESSER's 3 ARP funding, with a balance of $785,000 coming from the general fund capital expenditure budget. And then the school does have a plan to utilize funding that is to come in or be allocated towards revenue as a backup for any capital expenditures for the 22-23 fiscal year. So that's a lot of information. There's always so much going on in the business office, and I just wanted to make sure that we communicated all of the rods that we have in the fire, because a lot of these things are moving parts. They change every day. But what I can tell you is the tabulations that you see are current. The recommendation from the Finance and the Facilities Committee for the ventilation replacement project is option 3, which includes the base bid, the HVAC controls, the auditorium HVAC, and the electrical service upgrade, for a total project cost of $1,985,860. We would need to pass 3 resolutions to award the contracts to the 3 lowest bidders. And I'd like to address any questions before I request the board to make a motion. And it's also important to point out the reason why we called the special meeting is that with the supply shortage, it is really impacting various industries, and the mechanical industry that prepares these units and multiple other pieces of equipment. There are very long back orders, and we're very concerned, given our short summer schedule next year, that if we don't place the order as soon as possible, the order may not be here in time for them to install the ventilators. So we're doing everything we can. As I said, when we first started, we've been working on this project for about 17 months. We believe we've scoped it well. We've looked at every possible scenario, and we believe that the recommendation put forth is in the best interest of the school.
Okay, we can, I just have a question on the numbers, and I know, Brian, you have a question. Donna, I just noticed on the totals with apparent low bid, the contractors are all the same for the first 2, and the last option 3, you changed the general contractor. And
Yeah.
the costs, is that why some of the costs don't carry the same weight as in option 1 and option 2?
Yes, and I believe I will have to follow up with Jared. He had a $11,000 error the other day, and I'll definitely need to check on that. But the sheet that I was just provided, yeah, I'm gonna have to give him, hold on one second. No, that's right. So basically, because of the way the alternates were selected, that is the reason why we went from BSS contractors from option 1 and option 2 to option 3. And if we look at the bid tabulations, you'll see that for BSS, they were looking to charge more for the, let's see, they came in.
Yeah, there's about a $25,000 difference just for the base bid alone.
Correct.
DER coming in.
It was very, very close. But Donald Ressinger came in as the lowest bidder, and I will verify that. But according to all the numbers and based on what I'm looking at, they did come in with a total contract of $227,650, which was the lowest bid. So let me just run these numbers.
Yeah, it looks like the air conditioning was the big differential with an alternate. Significant, almost 3 times for DER option, the alternate 4.
Mm-hmm.
There was significance there if we had gone with those options.
Correct. So, so with that, the because of the total cost and the alternate selected, the the GC change to Richard Resinger, Inc. versus Bob Smith, BSS Contractors.
Who else has questions?
I just have a question, Dwayne.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Thanks for putting this all together, Donna. This is very helpful. I just wanted to double back to the document from April that you provided that outlines the professional services and the permits and fees and the contingency. And those items don't show up on the most current spreadsheet that we're looking at. Is that all wrapped into the base bid, or do we need to account for an additional few $100,000s to cover those fees?
Well, part of those fees have already been exhausted as we've moved through the initial part of the project and the documentation phase and the engineering services. Those services have already been completed.
Okay.
And the board has approved those proposals as we've moved forward. So there are some costs, like the project contingency remains open. The permitting fees, again, we have yet to see what those are. But for the professional services piece, we've probably used a third of what that cost is. So I believe that we are in good shape with those, and those have all been budgeted for this year. So and the budget for last year, when we were doing the scope of service on the initial work, the assessments on each of the ventilation system and some of the engineering services, we utilized ESSER 1's funds to do that, because at that time we did not know if this was a project. It was professional services that were rendered, and it would not have turned into a capital project until the board approved it. So that was a year ago. And so basically we used the ESSER funding that was available to us to assess all of these ventilation units and test air quality for the schools. We had that permitted use. So we utilized ESSER's 2 money to pay for that. So we were very lucky to be able to use that, and that helped offset any impact to our general fund.
Okay, thanks for the refresher, because I did forget most of that. But we will have to account for the contingency as it relates to these current projects, though, correct?
Correct. And as I stated before, and as we talked about at our committee meeting and the finance committee meeting, we will have that looking at those reconciliations that currently are pending when that revenue is realized, and if it is earmarked for capital improvements facilities, there is funding to cover that. And I'm confident that we'll be able to resolve the first reconciliation dispute at the beginning of 2022, and then we have the larger one that we'll be working on after the first one is settled.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Don, is there a timeline, just out of curiosity, if we go with option 3, when the alternates get everything complete? Are we looking, so the 1955, 1928 and the casework?
Well, that's going to go, since we decided and they were not prioritized as something that needed to happen next summer. I mean, it would have been very nice and we would have loved to have done it. What'll happen now is those items will move over into the long-term facility-wide plan, so that we can look to either phasing that or determining a time when those projects can be done. What I can say with the electrical service upgrade, it does give us the capacity to either bring in air conditionings for the classroom, similar to what we did at Kemblesville, which would help provide some relief on those hot days. Currently, without the electrical upgrades, we wouldn't have the electrical capacity to even bring an air conditioner in to those classrooms to help cool them off for staff and students. So that is built into here, and that was one of the reasons why the electrical service upgrade was selected, so that it gives us a little bit of room and flexibility until such a time we can look at air conditioning for the 1955 and 1928 building. But answered your question really quick, Dwayne, those 3 items will move to the facility-wide 3, 5, 10-year plan.
Okay.
One last thing, it is also worth noting for anybody looking at this who sees Bancroft Construction Company there. as the potential lowest bid. It is noted at the bottom that they did withdraw from their bid, so they are actually not an option.
Yeah, it looks like they really severely underbid.
Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding was that was a good thing.
That was okay. Good to know.
Donna, I have a question on all these bids. We have performance bonds with all of them.
Yes, we do. And the bond award is subject to the documents that were contained in the resolutions. For each contractor, the bond performance is required, as well as certificate of insurance. Multiple documents, insurance certificates, the construction agreement, payment and the performance bonds, and then final approval from all the necessary regulatory agencies. So if those 4 criteria points are not met, then it goes to the next bidder.
The numbers we're looking at include those specific performances.
Yes.
So Donna, none of this, you've funded this, but none of it takes into, we're not using any of that Coatesville money, that 654 for this, correct?
No, that is basically our contingency right now with this project. And luckily there's a good chunk of it is being paid for by the ESSER's 3 ARP grant.
Yeah, the 1.2.
Right. And then with this project and the Campbellsville early learning setting staff parking lot extension, our capital budget is pretty much close to the top. So it's important for us to know that there's always something that happens at one of the campuses. So in our discussions with facilities and finance, the goal would be for that deferred revenue, that first reconciliation, the 654,000 that we set, when that is realized as revenue, that we kind of earmark that for our capital improvements or expenditures. Should anything happen and we need to, our contingency is, we exceed our contingency, we have an avenue to go to. That's our backup plan. And then if the funds are not drawn upon, then what will happen in June of 2023, when we're under budget significantly, the finance committee will consider what that fund commitment will be for our facilities capital improvement fund that we commit each June. So again, we're trying to look ahead. We're trying to prepare. We know that we have those 2 reconciliations out there, and we're trying to be responsible, saying, okay, we know that's there. We know they're coming in. We'd like to earmark this towards capital improvements that'll give us the ability to remain responsible, as well as the ability to breathe and hope that nothing happens in a year. We don't want to be in that position.
No.
Donna, if those contingencies do not materialize, do we have to then draw upon the operating budget?
I beg your pardon, Jean?
If those contingencies that we're expecting and putting into this project do not materialize, in other words, in litigation, we end up having some challenges, does that come out of our operating budget?
If you're asking me, do I think that we're not going to receive the money for the reconciliation for the 18-19 school year? We already have the money, Jean. It's already in the account. It's just been deferred. And the Court of Common Pleas has already ruled on this with Collegium almost a year ago. And the Coatesville Area School District was ordered to pay them. So outside of anything, I believe that the funds will go to the Avon Grove Charter School, because it is the same situation as it was with Collegium. And then for the 827,000 that was just filed on November 27th, it is of the same nature. It's the same situation that was done 2 years ago. So I don't anticipate that the funds will not be directed to AGCS. The funds are already in our bank account. And should that not happen, then yes, we will need to look at our budget. We would need to reduce our capital expenditure budget for next year. Again, we're looking to resolve the first reconciliation claim in the first part of 2022. and the budget will be approved in June. So we'll know. And, as much as Kristen said, if she has to find some place to park cars and have teachers transported to the school, she'll do it. It's something we really don't want to do. But if the money is not available, then that's what we would do. She would find a solution, and we would do what we can to support her. So, so if the money doesn't come in, Jean, then we cut our capital improvement budget and we push it out. We push that staff parking lot project out a year.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else? Stacy, Michelle?
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a logistical question. Since we're hearing that there could be a potential time crunch with getting the supplies and equipment, what would happen if we don't have that in by the summer? Is this something that could be done during the school year?
It can't, and we've already had those conversations. So what we did was we pulled legal in to review the contracts, and with the shortage, no penalty to the contractor. I believe the cutoff date is May 15th. If we do not have a confirmed delivery date, or the equipment is stuck on a boat somewhere, AGCS has the ability to defer the project to the summer of 2023. So we built that into the project, knowing that that could be a possibility, and we wanted to make sure that our contractors were aware of that, and that it was built in so that we wouldn't be penalized and they wouldn't be penalized. And I believe that drop dead date is May 15th.
Does the contractor's amount still lock in for if we moved it out a year?
It does.
Donna, if that was the case situation, and we got a later delivery date and all these units came, would the school be in a situation where obviously if it's, all the equipment comes in, because we're talking about a lot of actual physical equipment, would the school be in a situation where we would need to store this equipment until the project could be done the next year? And is there any consideration, or would that look at the contractors and storing that? I'm just thinking of all these units, and they have to have a physical space if we can't do the work.
And we've already included that the contractors will hold on to the units.
Okay.
Questions, both of you, Michelle and Stacy. Thank you. Anyone else?
We're hoping for the best, though. We have our fingers crossed. It's all positive. It's all going to happen. It's the time for miracles, right?
Yep. So I'm going to look at, is there any other questions? Nope. There are 3 resolutions that need to be motioned and passed. The first one, if everyone is ready and is ready to consider, the first one is a motion to approve resolution 2022-05, which is to award the contract for general trade. Is there a motion to approve that?
Brian Ladman, I'll motion to approve.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second Stacy Barno.
Great. Any other questions or comments on that resolution to approve for the general trade? Nope. And I would just ask if you're all in favor to raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. All right. The second resolution is 2022-06-06, the contract to award for electrical. Do I have a motion to approve that one?
AGCS, I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Brian will second.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? No. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. All in favor, opposed? Nope, so moved. And the final resolution is 2022-07. It is the contract for the mechanical. I would need a motion to approve that.
I'll motion, Michelle McKay.
Thank you, Michelle. Do I have a second?
Brian Ladman, I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Nope, unanimous, so moved. All right, so that takes care of those three. Donna, I see you need those signed by Michelle and myself.
Yes, I was going to ask for your email authorization to execute or use the electronic signature. So I could send out the email this evening for you and Michelle to review. And all you would need to do is that you authorize me to use your electronic signature to sign the documents, to sign the resolution so that we can award the bids by the end of this week.
Okay, no worries. Can do that. Michelle, you good with that? Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, that would be it for this evening. Again, our next meeting is in January, towards the end of January. So unless anything else comes up, do I have a motion to adjourn? Unless Donna or Kristen, you have anything to say or discuss?
I just want to thank the board for making themselves available tonight to review this and provide us, the administration, with approval. So thank you, and I hope you all have a great holiday.
You too. Thank you very much. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Dwayne,
Motion to-
Stacy Barno, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I don't know. You got in right before Deji. You seconded. Okay. All in favor, say aye. All right. Everyone have a great holiday, and we'll see you in the new year. Take care.
Take care.